unlock your digital transformation success with cloud. And for this, I would like to invite our panel members, Mr. Devender Kumar, who is the CISO at ITC Infotech, Mr. Vishal Sinha, who is the VP of Technology at Paytm, Mr. Arunraja Karthick, who is the Head IT Services and Security at DTDC Express Limited, Mr. Chandramouli Govardhanaram, who is SVP IT at HDFC Bank, Sunil Sarat, who is SVP and Global Head Cloud Application and Digital Workplace Services at Microland Limited. And this elite panel would be moderated by Mr. Ajay Chawla, who is Head of IT and CISO at Sterlite Technologies.
Right. I think it's from a point of view that everybody talks about digital transformation. Cloud, in my mind, as I was earlier talking about, becomes like a fireball of base to build on it and unlock much more, which can be driven through the digital transformation. So with that, I would, when I'm passing a question to a gentleman, I'll also request them to give an introduction about yourself and any practical examples which you may have apart from what you would like to say. So with that, one of the questions which comes to our mind is, what are the best strategies to design your cloud? One of them is know your business requirement. Building around it, Chandramouli, I would love to get your perspective on this space. How do you want to design your cloud strategy?
Sure. Am I audible? Yeah, I assume I am. So I work as the Senior Vice President with HDFC Bank, and an apt question, thank you very much. We are in the process of moving the pieces. We are doing in-house development, and we took a decision to move to the cloud, at least to start with. The main reason, so one is the business ask. So for example, if you are doing something which is the core of the business, like in banking, if I go and say, hey, move your core banking into cloud, that might be something which might not be looked upon well, right? Because there is even if cloud has become secured, right? But there is a stigma around the security in cloud. The physical data center, I can see it, I can breathe it, I can feel it, and that is where I feel it's secured. That stays, right? So the main aspects which are considered when we decide first whether to go with cloud or not is, in SDFC we don't have to worry, but a lot of people have to worry, do I have ability to do a capital investment upfront, or do I have vendors who will give me on-prem setup at an EMI kind of a way? If not, I don't have a choice but to go with cloud, right? And the second point is, if I'm doing something experimental, which our team is doing, so we are experimentally trying to do something which was not done before. How do I size it? How do I get the right sized on-prem setup for it? First, I will do it on cloud. Then I'll understand how it works on cloud. Then I'll optimize on cloud. Then probably look at how I can bring it to on-prem, right? So these are two main drivers for me to decide what I would do on cloud versus what I would do on-prem. And from business perspective as well, there are a lot of regulatory aspects which are involved. If I talk about bank, I mean, each of the industry have their own regulators, but believe me, in India, bank has crazy number of regulators. So because of which it took us a long time to set up a construct in HDFC Bank to have our on-prem kind of framework extended to the cloud. So I think that was a driver which helped us move to cloud. Now we don't have a security concern when we have to move to the cloud. It's the optimization, if I know what will work well, the best hardware to do it on. So those are the aspects that we look at, and that helps us take a decision better.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Chandramouli. I think that brings a bank question out of the way with the compliances. I think you brought up that point. I think your strategy, apart from size, cost, security, I think compliance becomes a big factor. Thanks for sharing that perspective, Chandramouli. The next question is for Vishal. What are the effective cloud migration strategies and its associated challenges and opportunities, Vishal?
All right. Thanks, Ajay, for the question. I'm Vishal. I work with Paytm Payments Gateway as VP of Technology. So I think you have already shown it in one of your slides that the cloud migration strategies. To name a few, they are like lift and shift, wherein you don't change your application architecture, but you move it to the cloud. You change your DevOps deployment jobs. It may sound very simple, but what it saves you a lot of things like your development and QA testing time and your compliance and security reviews. But the challenge comes in the management of it. Things like you're not getting the best out of the cloud if it's a legacy application, or you may not actually be able to move it to the cloud. And mind you, at times what will happen is that your middleware will be left on your data center, at least during the phase of migration phase, wherein your databases or your queues or your caches are on your data center and the application you have moved in the cloud. So that brings in the latency also. To overcome that, the other strategy is you change the application architecture, which I think you mentioned it as
Replatform and re-architecture.
Re-architecting, and wherein but that of course is again a long-term solution, because it brings in your devs, your QAs, your security folks in picture. But then in the long term, you are going to be benefited in the sense that you can make you are using the best, taking the best out of the cloud. Then there's a middle strategy, which is re-platforming, wherein you change only part which is required to to move to the cloud. I guess you also mentioned, and you rightly mentioned, that there is no one solution for anyone to take, for a company to take. You have different applications based on how it is written, whether it suits to the cloud. One or more of the strategies can be followed.
Absolutely.
And of course, the last one is rewriting everything, but that is, yeah. If you have time and if your application
that nobody
so
has.
legacy that it cannot be re-architected or re-platformed, then, and I've seen a lot of places people do it. Yeah.
I think you talked about recoding. I think with the current tech debt, which is typically there in all the engineering companies, I think it's very difficult to catch up.
Correct.
So I think you talked about the small, medium, and long-term aspects. Different functions have to be involved in this. It's not just one function taking it into account. Good part is Vishal didn't talk about cost. So Paytm being Paytm. So I think on a lighter note, obviously, everybody has their own considerations. Nobody is out of it. But thanks for sharing your perspective, Vishal. Next question is for Sunil. How would you, since we talked about, and many people talked about cost, and I also tried to touch upon it, I would love to hear about you, from you specifically, from a services mindset. How would you optimize your cloud cost, and how have you done it so far?
Great question. My name is Sunil, and I'm the Global Head of Cloud and Infrastructure Services for Microland. So I will not be exaggerating if I say that I haven't seen a single enterprise who have not faced cloud cost challenges. But cloud cost optimization, rather I would call it FinOps, is a vast topic, but I'm going to talk about 5 pointers. Number one, cloud cost optimization, as a lot of people believe, is not a one-time exercise, but it is an ongoing activity. Tools apart, you have processes and, more importantly, architecture, because well-architected cloud environments save you a lot of money. Number 2 is cloud cost optimization is not an IT person's job, which is again a mistake a lot of people do. In fact, if your cloud spend is more than $1 million per annum, you need to have a FinOps guy, dedicated FinOps guy, specialized FinOps guy who is going to work with execs, finance teams, procurement teams, DevOps teams, and engineering teams to manage the cost on an ongoing basis. Third thing, you talked about tools, right? So tools are important because they give you visibility and also give you quick wins, like recommendations around, having your unused storage detection and looking at reserved instances recommendation. But more than that, you need to look at processes. For example, how do you bring in new procurement processes? And I already talked about architecture, but also governance is important. How do you tag all your assets? How do you, define the metadata? Right? Staying on tools, my fourth point is my recommendation is to buy tools that have, facilities, that have the ability to, enable you write your own optimization rules. The bigger ones don't let you do that, by the way. That's because every organization is unique and every workload is unique, and therefore you need to be able to write your own cost optimization tools. Last but not least is automation. You need to automate workflows like, anomaly alerts or budget alerts, or even, finance approval workflows, so on and so forth. So automation is the key, and I believe if one adopts some of these best practices, it's it's going to be a good savings in terms of cloud costs.
Thank you, Sunil. I think a great perspective. I think it comes from that experience of having done it for many people, especially you talking about your tool. I think that whole thing is coming you have to understand your need and create an environment to control the cost around it. Anybody else? I think it's an interesting topic. Anybody else would want to jump in? Yeah, thank you, Arun, for taking this up.
Yeah, thanks, Ajay. Yeah, myself, Arunraja. I work for DTDC. I head IT services and security for DTDC. So I just want to put my perspective on top of Sunil, right? Sunil touched based on critical note, which again, a lot of enterprises still sees as a stigma rule, kind of like FinOps. Okay. So largely we feel when it comes to cloud cost optimization, immediate thing comes to our brain is, okay, I did a reserved instance, I think I've saved my cost. All good. So end of the month when I see my bill, probably $500 would have reduced. I have reserved my cost. Then we need to go back and see, okay, what I reserved, how much it have consumed. All of those things will be again reactive. Okay. So thus the importance of FinOps will become more critical, very more critical. So FinOps is not a person, it is not a tool, it is a combination of a brain and the technology. And it should be a practice which should be carved out from the existing technology team, includes the brain of service management and finance. Who manages IT budget? How does the cost goes in? I mean, lot of time we lose cost in cloud, not just because of my infrastructure is sized up. I did a lift and shift, and thus I couldn't able to understand the cost utilization of it. Lot of time we lose cost because we not monitored it day in, day out properly. Okay. So how it can happen? We should have a team which does the monitoring, not just on the technology piece of it, into cost part of it also. Have I did the right sizing? Have I did the right commitment? Am I being used for the best? That's the tool. My investment on cloud have provided the right return of investment that has to decide the cost I'm going to invest, right? So the cost optimization is not just a person, it is not just an activity, it is going to be a brain, and the technology together delivers to the organization. Okay, so that's my perspective.
Thank you, Arun. I think a very practical perspective. I think coming from the person who was, delivering a lot of products for us, and I think they have their own challenge of cost is everywhere a challenge, right? So I think that practical aspect and bring keeping, finance and the mindset that it's a healthy thing to have from the stage. It's just not one step. You have to manage the next step also. A reserved instance is not the end of the story. There is more beyond
We should not give surprises to CFO.
it. Absolutely.
It should be pre-planned better.
Absolutely.
Or rather, we give them alarm that, okay, I'm going to increase my cost. Please be ready to approve it.
That
Okay.
never happens.
Not so easy, but at least that buzzer is always on.
Thank you, Arun. I think very healthy perspective. I think then the other topic which I think people have adopted too, but I think it's always best to use that leverage is security on cloud. And I think the strategies around it, the opportunities which we have, how do you manage risk around with, what you are doing on the cloud? With that, I will request Devender to, share his perspective.
Thanks, Ajay. I'm Devendra. I'm Chief Information Security Officer with ITC Infotech. Well, I'll try and cover this topic. This is vast, huge, but I'll throw my light on some of the interesting areas which I think could be of interest to you. So when we talk of strategies, first I think we have to look at the risk. And when I say risk in the cloud, you have to look at investment, you have to look at budget, you have to look at cost, all of us were discussing. And then comes the other requirement which is relevant is the legal and compliance requirements which you have. And then supply chain, and finally comes the pure cyber risk. So taking on, I'll talk about some of the items from the legal side, legal and compliance side. All of you are aware, I'm sure all of you heard about the data residency requirements. We have data residency requirements in India, and we also have data residency requirements related laws all over the world. So that becomes a key factor when you are moving to cloud, or even if you're already there on the cloud. So this is something everybody talks, but point which gets missed along with this is your KMS, your key management. When you have to align your key management strategy with your data residency requirement, especially if you are a multinational company or you do business in many countries. I have seen cases where data residency has not been aligned with the KMS strategy has not been aligned with the data residency requirement, and that itself will become a non-compliance, or you will have problem with the laws at a later point in time. Because in many countries, government has the authority to take control of the data for under certain situations. Of course, there are processes for that. So in that event, when your key management system is being governed by a different law and your data residency requirements are governed by a different law, there will be problems. Other requirement which is related with data residency requirement is the logging and monitoring. More than the monitoring, the logging. So when you are hosting your data in a country, because of data residency requirement, you also have to see where the logs are being stored. While you still have to monitor all of that from your SOC, but you have to still see that you're complying with the logging requirement in line with the data residency requirements. So data residency has to align with these two items. That's one. The other area I want to touch upon is the supply chain risk. There are large, and especially it becomes more important if it's a SaaS provider. On one side, there are reputed SaaS providers which will tell you what is your responsibility, what you're supposed to do, and what we are supposed to do, and how to make it secure, and all of that. A lot of documentation is available, and they are reputed, and there is something at stake for them as well. But then the problem starts when you have the smaller players. There are a lot of smaller players. They offer SaaS services for a particular application, and that's where your supply chain risk comes in. Your supply chain risk management team has to make sure they don't stop at looking at a SOC 2 Type 2 report, or a 27001 certification, or a report, or a third-party report. Your supply chain team should get into the details, especially nothing against the smaller companies, but you must get into the details and make sure you satisfy yourself, you satisfy your requirements, you satisfy your regulatory requirements around supply chain, all of that. I have seen many of these players who will claim a lot of things, but they will not have the required controls in place. So that's around the supply chain risk. Now coming to the cyber risk, I'll say always start with a design. Design architecture plays a major role when you want to adopt cloud. Many times we move to cloud and then because it's small application, doesn't matter, it's not critical, we'll just move without thinking anything. But then later you discover suddenly something has become big. So always look at the architecture, look at the design, look at management groups and all of that, and then move to cloud. It should not be an afterthought. Your landing zone, your secure gateway, all of that is required in the cloud. That's part one. Other important aspect over there is the misconfigurations. You are moving to infrastructure as a service, you're utilizing from one CSP or the other CSP. But the problem is our teams which will end up making a lot of misconfiguration or some of the mistakes. So please have a have a ongoing monitoring some of the CSPM capabilities, whether you want to use the capabilities which are native capabilities or you need a tool. I'll not get into that kind of prescription, but that's something all of us have to see what makes sense and then adopt that. There has to be an ongoing monitoring of your cloud security posture. So do those assessments, and then logging and monitoring I have already spoken about. The next item related to that is the data and the data loss prevention. Just because it is cloud, there will be those admins who will go and place it on the cloud without thinking the proper secure web gateway, without thinking about the data loss prevention related controls which you have to adopt. So look at that. So, and finally, I mean, this list can go on. I'll not try to cover everything, but the last is adopt the automation. When you are not automating, you're leaving it to the admin every time to go and configure something. Believe me, they will make mistakes. They will go and make mistakes. When you have the automation, you have the guardrails, you have the policies, you have all of that automated. That's where you will expect 99.9% your environment is secure, and of course then you have to monitor it on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
I think these are some of the pointers which I would like to highlight.
I think, Devendra, thank you very much. I think it gives a very structured and experienced view of, what aspects to look for. And I think for any other panel member, anything which you wanted to say, but you would want to, please, Chandramouli, you would like to share something?
Yeah, so the last point specifically, right? So what saved us, what saves us? So HDFC Bank, in comparison to rest of the banks, is very conservative and is very, if I say, paranoid about security in comparison to rest of the banks. In India itself, that's how I would wish to portray ourselves as.
Yeah.
And given that is the status, what helps us move to cloud is automate it, have things in Terraform, create the environment, including all the policies which have to be implemented. You test it in lower environment, have the security team run through it, have a lot of red and blue testing done, have pen test done. You do all the testing and ensure you do container scans, everything in the lower environment.
Yes.
And after that, it should be the exact thing replicated in production, right? So that gives a better sense of security.
Yeah.
Which means a lot of things move to the developer as well, which means you have to try and do things as a part of the pipeline, right? You do the SAS scan, DAS scan, OSA, SEA scan, and ensure that you fix all of those things. Take care of all the checklists as a part of design itself. Don't push it onto the security team and say, hey, take care of security, it's your problem, right? So
absolutely wonderful. I think, Chandramouli, you brought in a big aspect, and I think that's an encouraged environment, right? Have the problem fixed here, nobody is questioning you, nobody is finger pointing at you, solve it here, so that the bigger aspect when we are talking about money and the culture which you bring in, Thank you very much, Chandramouli. Happy to, yeah, Arun, please.
Just adding to Devendra's statement, right? No, security has never been an 100% game. Okay, it cannot be an ever. But still, when we solution it in cloud, what is that I'm picking up and how I'm choosing the entire architecture, not just from the application. So you covered up the application piece of it. So I'm just compensating to Vishal's, the landing zone piece of it, right? The automation piece of it. Lot of time, in my personal experience, I've been in the services side as well too. So lot of time, this landing zone is being taken for granted, okay, or it is not given that priority. First of all, why should I have a landing zone? You just create an account, start hosting my application, that's all, right? If I want to secure, you just on a security group, just put a role, but all gone, right? But it doesn't work that way. The control tower should be designed in such a way that top to bottom approach of security has been automated. It has been built into the culture and the system as a design, not on the individual parameters. We cannot manage individual I cannot control an admin tomorrow what he is going to do. He might open something or he might deny something. But have we restricted that in the landing zone control tower? My SAP is being managed in a way that misconfiguration cannot be just like that handled. That would take care of my entire infrastructure from the VPC perspective.
Perfect.
Okay, so if that given the equal importance when we do the design, by not overlooking just security as a code, as a practice, then it would make pretty much of sense to live in cloud forever.
Perfect. Thank you, Arun. I think these perspectives really help. At least it helped me a lot to learn from all these views coming in. Anybody has a question? Feel free to ask. Yes, please. Can the mic go there? We still have the energy. There are question coming in. Yeah, yes.
Now sovereign cloud we're talking about, right? So the trend is going like this verticalized, right? So means data center to then we're talking about cloud, then private cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, now industry-specific cloud for financial services or retail or manufacturing, then sovereign cloud. So what is the basic difference between we're talking about data locality? So what is the difference between data locality and data sovereignty and data residency? This is a very basic question. I want to know what is the difference actually.
Very, very important question. Thank you, Robin, for asking that. Anybody would like to share a perspective on this?
Yeah, data locality. For example, like a lot of companies like Singapore, Australia or India, they're creating their own cloud, right? So because they do not want to like foreign access of the data particularly. We want to store our data in, because you know that nowadays what happening, okay, so the Facebook data or Twitter data. Now India government is telling that you host your server in India, or if you are not hosting also, the data should not move out of my region, geographical region. Correct? See,
so locality, residency, yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
End of the day, all of these are data residency requirements which come from the law from that country. So, law of the land.
Yeah.
So, you have to see where you're doing the business, where your data is, and what are the requirements. So, there is no one size fits all kind of a prescription here. If we are talking about India, we have to see, okay, if it's an insurance data or a bank related data, or what sort of data are we talking, and then what regulations apply to us. And then only we will have to go. If let's say you have an application which serves your customers in 30 countries, then of course you have to pick up the law from each country and then take a decision, how do I meet the data residency requirements at the same time run a central application. So this is a very, we'll have to look at the law in each country and then take a decision.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Devin. Yes, sir.
I'll just add to him, right? So he just mentioned one size doesn't fit all, right? Just adding to the last statement, even in India from last year, MCA came up and started asking that Ministry of Corporate Affairs, right? Even if it is a SaaS application or any such application, one copy of backup should be available in India. If we are going for an statutory audit, ITGC compliance, right? So we as an organization handle multiple countries. My data moves around multiple countries. We host applications somewhere else in the world. My end consumer of the data is someone else. But when it comes to audit or when it comes to book of record, does the book of record is being maintained in India also? Have I have a copy of that data in India? This is a law of land. Okay. In India, I have this compliance. If I cut this and see from the other perspective, it will be from GDPR perspective. They call that my data of this particular country should not move out of this particular region, right? So data resiliency is purely depend on what is that the local law of land demands and how I am prepared for handling a mother nation as well as my serving nation.
Yes. And the other compliance.
Yeah,
and I
the
think
compliance. We cannot meet all the compliance in one shot, but I should be prepared for having answers for both the perspectives.
I think just want to add that, these laws are changing. Be in tune with what is happening and be ready to comply. It's not necessary to comply today, but that plan should be there when you are going to comply. Without that, I think you would be hit with something which you would obviously, don't want to. So I think thank you. I think when it's coming from that thinking that, data is very important. And I think today's data can be anywhere. As I was saying, metaverse could be a customer of using DTDC service. You never know now in today's world. So I think that data is somewhere else. You don't even know where that user is. So thank you very much. Thanks for the I think that perspective from everybody helped a lot. I think it further frames our discussion of how cloud is the thing which is unlocking the digital transformation. And I think there are certain considerations to be taken. And I think these esteemed gentlemen have shared their perspective. Thank you very much again for your kind thoughts. Thank you.